And these microcurrents are one of the most unnerving things I see for visiting anglers. They look at it and they're like, that's where the fly landed. Now it's 4 feet away from where it was drifting, in a separate current. So that's a definite challenge to fishing the Letort.
Welcome to the Destination Angler Podcast, the podcast for anglers who travel. And I'm your host, Steve Haigh. We go right to the source, the local guides and experts, to build your knowledge of top fishing locations around North America. It's a big world out there. Now go and fish it.
I'm going away for a while, but I'll be back soon. Whoa, whoa.
You can join in the conversation with our new Facebook group called the Destination Angler Connection. Please check that out when you get a moment or two. And if you enjoy the show, please give us a share, like, or follow on Facebook or Instagram, and be sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And today, our destination is Carlisle, Pennsylvania, in the hallowed grounds of the Letort Spring Run, possibly the most famous limestone spring creek in the East. Rich in history and angling tradition, the Letort is known as the birthplace of American terrestrial fishing. Legendary anglers such as Ernie Schweibert, Charlie Fox, and Ed Shank have developed many popular fly patterns and techniques right here on the Letort that are used the world over. Our guest is expert guide and conservationist Neil Sunday, head guide with Relentless Fly Fishing and chief social media dude for TCO Fly Shop. Neil grew up in the Cumberland Valley and has fished these limestone streams all his life. He studied political science at Indiana University, that's in Pennsylvania, and he's a 7-year board member for Cumberland Valley Trout Unlimited, and leads the stream improvement work there. In the winter, Neil follows his passion for snowboarding by coaching a U.S. Olympic athlete, which has taken him all over the world. And lucky for us, Neil is here to tell us why the Letort is so famous and why even the most experienced angler might need to up his or her game a notch or two to tangle with a wild Letort brown trout. Neil, welcome to the show.
Hey, thank you very much. It's good to be connected.
Yeah, really glad you're on the show today. And I tell you, I grew up in Toledo, Ohio, tying these Letort hoppers. And I know now after talking to you that it's actually Letort. And that's the correct way to say it, correct?
That's right, my man, Letort.
Okay. And so who is Letort? He's a settler, right?
Yes. James Letort came over. He was the first European to settle in Cumberland County. Had a trading post between right around 1713. James Letort set up a trading post in the area that we call Bonnybrook. Yeah, Bonnybrook is really the first fishable areas, like up near the headwaters of the Letort.
Okay.
He was with us until he continued west and settled up somewhere out in the Midwest, actually through Ohio, I believe, was the last known whereabouts. So he was here for a while and made his mark. Yeah.
I guess. So you've been out fishing this week. You said you've done 6 trips in the last 6 days or something. How's the fishing been?
Fishing's good right now. It's an early game and finding where the cold water is here in the Cumberland Valley. So I've been busy and I'm thankful to be busy these days.
Heck yeah. Right. So I'm sitting here with a copy of 50 Places to Fish Before You Die by Chris Santella. And in it, he calls the Letort a fabled classroom, which I thought was kind of interesting. And some other things I've read compare the Letort with a conquest, like climbing Mount Everest. And other articles I've read talk about kind of like a love-hate relationship with the stream, like it's fishing in a jungle with all the vegetation in and along the water. But you really enjoy fishing this little stream, and I'm wondering, why is that?
May I say that everyone who wrote about it that says, it's a beautiful 50 places to fish before you pass and it's a love-hate relationship, they're all absolutely right. I personally, I'm drawn to the Letort because I feel as you mature as an angler, you like to have the challenge. You like the process of planning for a day on the Letort and tying flies at the bench. So when it does happen, the successes, they're incredible. It's one of the, it's right up there with catching a permit. maybe not quite that much, but yeah, it's good.
Yeah, well, it sounds challenging. We're going to hear all about that today. So it's probably the most, if not one of the most famous limestone creeks in America. Talk to me a little bit about what is it about limestone that makes trout fishing or trout streams so great?
Sure. Mention the word limestone to any trout fisherman that's been around a while and seen their fair share of temperamental and fluctuating water. Limestone is really the it's nature's purifier. The limestone creeks of the Cumberland Valley, the water that flows through them, it buffers the pH levels. It provides nutrients. If you look at all the cress grass that grows in a limestone creek, there's endless supply of invertebrates and cress bugs and small larvae that limestone water quality provides. So it really is, it's nature's filter almost. The water gets buffered and we reap the benefits. As fishermen, we don't have anything without water quality, and that's what limestone provides.
Okay, that's great. All right, so tell me, where is the Letort, and give me a description. What's the character of the water as it flows along its way?
Sure. The Letort, based just outside of Carlisle, it's an 11-mile spring-fed creek that flows east to the Conneauguenit Creek. It's a tributary of the Conneauguenit, which then flows down into the Susquehanna River. So,
okay.
It starts just outside of Carlisle in an area known as Bonnybrook. Well, there's some tiny little trickles to the west of Bonnybrook, but Bonnybrook's the first real, what most people consider the Letort. So the Letort, once it leaves Bonnybrook, it joins the two main branches of the Letort join, and they go past the quarry area, right up in the upper parts of the Letort, and I would consider the upper parts down to about the start of the Letort Park, which is right at the edge of the Carlisle borough. So that first mile or 2.5 miles at the most, is a very small, almost feeder type spring. You're talking about a 10-foot cast with a 10-foot or a 12-foot leader at the most.
Yeah.
It's a very small, winding little creek that continually, as it goes into the Letort Park, that would be the lower, the middle portion of the Letort Spring Run, all the way through Carlisle in the borough, which, some people fish, but we really leave the middle section in the borough alone. And then through the Carlisle Army Barracks, Area 51, because very few of us have ever fished it. And then the lower Letort is really downstream of the Carlisle Barracks. And the Carlisle Barracks actually just recently instituted a catch and release policy for the entire section, their section of the waterway. So,
okay,
anglers that do get permission to visit there it's now 100% catch and release, which it didn't do. So we thank them for their efforts in that.
Yeah.
And then below the Carlisle Barracks, you're looking at a section down through Harmony Hall and the kitchen shop area, or what we call Shady Lane. Famous area for tricos and where Vince Marinero fished, and one of the areas. It continually winds down through and enters at Letort Falls Park into the Conneauguenit Creek with about a 6 or 7 foot waterfall.
Okay, cool.
In a nutshell, I just took you on a fast forward.
There we go. That's perfect. So I was in Colorado a few weeks ago and came across a really cool app called Trout Routes. If you've ever looked for a good map to help you with anything from public access to finding the best trout streams in a given area, I highly recommend checking out Trout Routes. Trout Routes has mapped out and rated each and every trout stream by state, covering public land access, places to camp, hiking trails, stream flows, bridge access points, boat launches, fly shops, even interactive elevation charts. And you can download maps for offline use, which was super helpful to us when we were in the Poudre River Canyon a few weeks ago. So today they cover 7 states, including Colorado and the Driftless region in the Midwest. We did a show on the Driftless a few weeks ago, and are working on a big update to add 7 new states, including Montana, Wyoming, and Michigan. So if you have an upcoming trip or looking to explore nearby streams, I suggest you check out Trout Routes today on your Apple or Android phone. So is the lower section, where would you suggest people fish? Is that the best part, the lower section?
I get this question a lot, and it's a very different dynamic. There's absolutely, I think, a little easier angling opportunities in the lower section. If you're looking at, say the areas right around what we call the Sports Emporium down near Route 11, any area in there, the waterway is a little more forgiving, and it's still tough. It's still an incredible challenge, but it seems to be, there's more fish down there. And then the Pennsylvania Fish and Boat Commission has done fish surveys and biomass studies, and it's just, there are more fish down there, almost, I'd say 60% more fish in the lower portions, from the Carlisle Barracks down. than there is in the upper section.
Okay.
But I always call like the upper section, Vince's Meadow. If you want classic Letort fishing, you can't beat Vince's Meadow. A property that Vince Marinero actually owned, and he sold to Cumberland Valley Trout Unlimited about a month before he passed away. The deal was made, and
oh, that's great.
Now that's a public access area for anglers and visiting guests that we have, and that's a classic meadow that if you think of the Letort, you'll think of something that you see when you go to Vince's Meadow, and that's more of the upper Letort.
Okay.
I would say that's where the fish have their PhDs. You know what I mean?
I gotcha.
You've got some smaller fish and you've got some highly educated trout, really, really attuned to their surroundings in the meadow-like environment.
That's a great overview. And so public access, can I get into all these places?
Yeah, you can. You can have on the Letort, there's the Bonnybrook parking area, which is also land that was acquired by Cumberland Valley Trout Unlimited in an area called Trago's Meadow. That is the uppermost section of the fishable waters of the Letort. And from our property, when I say our, I mean Cumberland Valley Trout Unlimited property at Bonnybrook and then the parking area there, it links up with the Letort Spring Nature Trail. You can hike down that trail and fish most of the way, all the way into the Letort Park just outside of Carlisle. So it provides really great access to areas that we call, and I'm moving downstream from Trago's Meadow to the Bonnybrook area down into the Quarry Meadow. We basically divide it up by meadows. So you go into the Quarry Meadow, that goes into Otto's Meadow, and then it's straight into Vince's Meadow. So that's the upper Letort in a nutshell. Other good access areas below Vince's, there's a parking area at Charlie Fox's property. Charlie, the dean of the Letort, owns property along the Letort, and Charlie Fox's area is a great area. You can see the spawning lanes that he built there. That's right around the Route 81 bridges, the underpass that's there, and then you go into the Letort Park, which we fish that occasionally in the colder months. In the summer, it's just it's too busy. It's a park, and when you go to the Letort, you want to get away from all that.
Yeah.
The populations. So, but you can fish the Letort Park at times.
Okay.
Going south, yeah, go other popular access areas or any road that crosses over. Post Road, there's access. Harmony Hall,
yeah, all
the way down through. If you the Sports Emporium has been known to let anglers access there. They're sometimes they have events, but and they ask you to stay off their property. But when they're not having an event there, we've been known to fish there. So. And all the way down to the Letort Falls Park. So I think I hit just about all of them along the 11 miles.
That's awesome. That sounds like a lot of great access. And the Letort has a different strain of brown trout in it, right? What is the strain that it's got?
Well, it started, I guess, with the Loch Levin strain of brown trout. There's certain guys that swear by the Loch Levins as being a trout that thrives on movement. So there's many Letort anglers that say that some of these trout will actually move within a water system and go down over the falls at Letort Falls Park. And this can be a controversial topic because some people say no way and other people say yes. So I'm not giving an opinion either way, but I will say that I will say I've caught definite Letort trout in the Con of the Gwinnett Creek. At certain times of the year, they move.
They
around.
Get down there, yeah.
So I believe they move around in search of food, and they will move around to get that larger food source. And I've if you go to the Letort Falls Park in April or May, as the water temperatures on the Con of the Gwinnett Creek are warming up, you're going to see those trout trying to jump the falls and waiting for a high water event so they can get up over. So
cool.
I think fish move around, and I mean, how else can you explain being in one area in, say, March and it being void of fish, and you go back in June and it's full and you can see
it's
them
loaded
because they're swimming away from you as you spook them. You know what I mean? So, these fish definitely do move around a little bit, whether it's within the system or whether they stay within the creek or whether they go out. We'll let that mystery remain, but I'd probably be banking on there's some traffic over those falls.
they're moving. So you mentioned high water events. So when it rains, how's the river handle the rain?
This is a great tip for visiting anglers. I get the call, when I'm at the fly shop a lot, I see Cumberland Valley, Carlisle or Boiling Springs received 2 inches of rain. The yellow breaches and the other creeks are blown out. Where can I go? The upper Letort, down to Route 81, I would say, or Charlie Fox's area, we could sustain 2.5 inches of rain tonight, and I could go over there tomorrow and fish.
Oh, nice.
A lot of the drainage from the borough of Carlisle makes the lower Letort blown out, but it quickly rebounds. I don't think I've ever had to wait more than 48 hours for the Letort to become completely fishable in any condition. So yeah, and for the upper Letort to become muddy, I haven't seen a water like that,
Yeah.
So it's that meadow, and all the fields and farmland and the natural riparian buffer zone. Sorry to throw in those fancy words, but the riparian buffer zone, that's what surrounds the Letort. You know what I mean?
Yeah. So
that area and low gradient, it's not like it's draining quickly into the upper parts of the Letort. It's laying in that almost pasture-like meadow environment. So
that's great.
The water slowly seeps in at a good level and a good rate.
Sounds resilient. Talk about some of these famous guys that I mentioned in my intro: Ed Shank, Vince Marinara, Charlie Fox, all those guys. What have they contributed to the sport of fly fishing, and what do they teach us from the Letort?
When you think about I'll say the old guard, I tend to think of these guys, each one of them had their specialties, and I know I'm going to leave out a bunch of guys, but the 4 that come to mind for me is Vince Marinaro, Charlie Fox, Ed Koch, and Ed Shank. And I'll touch base real quick with how I think about, what each one of them contributed from my knowledge. I mean, granted, at 47, I'm on the young side to be talking history of the Letort, but, Vince, I mean, these guys were all accomplished anglers, conservationists, fishermen, biologists, fly tyers, innovators. Vince, who passed away in 1986, he wrote a modern dry fly code and a Ring of the Rise. I mean, these are some of the premier, they're really the 10 commandments of fly fishing, for dry flies, and for a guy to sit and study rise forms on trout when he did this and when he authored these books, we didn't have that at the time.
Yeah.
And it's something that anglers now, you have this instant library where when Vince was writing it, this was all groundbreaking. And, the style of thorax dun that he ties, that's so heralded, you need, it takes an entire classroom environment to learn how to tie one of his Marinaro thorax duns and how it sits in the water just a little bit lower than like a Catskill tied dry fly.
Sure.
These are the things that Vince brought to the table. Educated knowledge of flies and of trout behavior. I fish with 8.5 foot 3 weights, or, the standard Swiss Army knife of fly fishing is the 9 foot 5 weight, but Vince was out there fishing with a 5.5 foot 4 5 weight, He was always tinkering and finding better ways to fish, specifically the creeks of his area, the limestone creeks of his area. So I really consider Vince as just an overall scientist. Charlie, another great author. We lost Charlie in 1997. He wrote The Wonderful World of Trout. He was the founder of Trout Unlimited in Pennsylvania, integral in everything with Cumberland Valley Trout Unlimited. Charlie was an endless conservationist. He was always, whether he was planting 55-gallon drums in the Letort, which are now filled with sediment, and we're taking them out slowly. I'm sorry, Charlie, but they were great when you put them in. They were great as spawning habitat.
I was going to say, that doesn't sound very good.
Yeah, they were great as...
Oh, for spawning?
Yeah, I mean, the things that Charlie did, with his crew were great, but as everything, they eventually run their time and they need upkeep. And Charlie was just a continual protector of the Letort. He was always looking out. He lived near the Letort, so he could go to his property and actually he could live, he could monitor it because he was there. He was integral on the property.
Yeah.
Always thinking of ways to put gravel in the creek for spawning habitat. He would plant or drive, I should say, wooden stakes or saplings into the creek to try to create riffles for mayflies to deposit their eggs, because they didn't like to deposit eggs in still water. So he was always, and again, I think time frame of this stuff, Steve, when these guys were doing this, there wasn't a whole lot of science, documented science, I should say, behind this.
Sure.
So everything they were doing was experimental, but yet it was documented, and it was for a reason to protect the habitat, protect the water quality, and then the fish will flourish. And they were letting wild trout be wild,
Nice.
And that's a beautiful thing,
Okay.
Ed Shank, and I'll just wrap it up with, Ed Shank and Ed Koch. I mean, those guys also had their place in the history books of the Letort. Ed Koch, original Yellow Breeches Outfitters shop, opened up in 1974. Ed started that shop, which still stands to this day, now known as the Tulpahawken Creek Outfitter, TCO Outfitter.
Okay.
Where I'm at every once in a while. Ed held down the Yellow Breeches Outfitters in 1974 and brought a home base to anglers visiting the Cumberland Valley, and that was pretty unique. He also caught back in the day, I think it was 62. He caught a 9-pound brown out of the Letort that I guess he caught it on a dry fly.
Oh my gosh!
That was considered, like the state record for dry fly catches. On a fly rod. Koch was that savvy angler. I've heard stories of guys. There used to be a sign on the door. Out for 30 minutes fishing. Return in a while.
That's great.
He was a guide. He was an angler.
Yeah.
So they all encompass different things. And I mean, finally, Ed Shank, who just left us in April of this year,
shoot, really?
Carlisle native, Ed, Mr. Shank, I saw him on a regular basis at a pizza shop in Boiling Springs. He'd be there with his buddies, on Saturdays. And Ed was a consummate, master fly tyer. I mean, the Letort hopper, which, you think about the Letort, you're going to think hoppers, and Shank's minnow and Shank's sculpin. He was a fisherman. He was a fisherman's fisherman.
Yeah.
Always looking for, the best patterns, which he held kind of close to his chest.
Is that right?
Yeah. It's been, all these guys did. They held their secrets because they were the forefront, they weren't posting them on YouTube or
competitive too, right?
Yeah, they weren't posting them on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram like all of us do now in the modern age. These guys held secrets, and if you wanted to learn something, you went to the Yellow Breeches Outfitters and you drank enough coffee and hung around these guys, and so that was sort of I think my first that's sort of the cornerstone of fly fishing in the Cumberland Valley. So these guys helped solidify it.
And you're telling me a story that before we turn on the record button here about Ed Shank and something about a white sculpin or a white fly. Tell us that story for a minute. Yeah.
Yeah, it was the Shank's minnow is normally tied in like a white, like an off-white color, and also the sculpin's tied in black and white. So two main colors, black and white with an occasional olive. But someone later in life, I guess, towards Ed's later years, they asked him, what did you actually catch more fish on, the white or the black? And how I heard the story was, all Ed Shank said to this person was, well, I think they both work, but I fished the white one more. And he left it at that. So,
that's all he said.
Even
so you figured out
in those days, even in those days, he, these guys still guarded their secrets.
Yeah, he wasn't going to give you too much there.
Right.
You were telling me about a guy that you took fishing. I'm not sure how long ago it was, but he was 70s and was just really wanting to go fishing. What was his story?
Yeah, this was a client of mine who had fished the Yellow Breeches for about, I think they went out with me 2 or 3 times over the series of some summers. In the summertime, they'd come down from Rochester, New York. And he finally, he's like, Neil, I really want to catch a fish from the Letort. I have seen this fishery and I've never fished it. I've been coming down here to visit relatives or family for 4 decades. And I prepared him. I gave him the normal spiel of, hey, one rise on a day's trip on the Letort is a good day, and I aim low and hopefully wish for the best. And I said, hey, let's prepare for one strike today, but we got to be ready. And lo and behold, we were out there in the morning. It was during the summertime. We were fishing a parachute ant, and lightning struck, meaning that fish, we got our rise. He brought the fish in. I dipped down over the bank, which is the only time I get in the Letort is to net a fish sometimes. We were near an undercut bank, and I cut the fish off before it ran under the bank, and I'm unhooking the fish, and it's in my net, keeping the fish in the water. And I turn around, and I was like, hey, sit down back here. We'll grab a quick photograph for you. And as I turn around, he's at the bank, and his eyes are welling up.
Oh my gosh!
And to watch a man, in his mid-70s who had thought about the Letort for 40 years, and catching fish, to finally have it happen. His hands are trembling, and I, of course, being the guy, the rough and tumble, been there, done that guy, I'm just like, hey man, welcome to the club.
Yeah.
He said, welcome to the club. And I gave him a high five, and we got a picture, and we released that trout, and
brought a tear to his eye.
Yeah. That happens a lot, when I'm out guiding, and I should say it happens a lot. People have an overwhelming reaction when it finally comes together, on the Letort.
If you really understand what the Letort is all about, then you've got to really understand this, right? Yeah.
Yeah. I've watched some seasoned, military veterans come to the Letort, and just to watch them cradle a 9 or a 10-inch brown that they've just fooled on a dry fly or a terrestrial.
Yeah.
It ties the knot. It brings it, whatever you want to say, it ties the knot, it circles the wagon, whatever it is, it brings a sense of fulfillment that you're not going to get catching a stocked fish on a mop fly. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it just is a sense of overwhelming accomplishment. And those are the days that I really cherish, as a fishing guide. I love it. It's an us versus the trout mentality when we're out there fishing. It's a team effort, and to see it all come together is incredible. So,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
What a great story. Tell us a little bit about your story. So you've got a pretty good gig here, head guide for a fly fishing guiding company and social media manager at TCO. How'd you end up in that spot?
Yeah, man. I had always been a savvy fisherman, growing up in this area. When the former Yellow Breeches Outfitters opened as a TCO Fly Shop, I had been a customer to start out, and I had owned my own business. So I had the freedom to fish, and I had the freedom to take off winters and coach snowboarding. And I became a frequent customer of the fly shop.
Okay.
And one day I walked in, and I was going for coffee actually with the legendary fishing guide Tom Baltz and his wife, and my wife and I we were meeting over at the Boiling Springs coffee shop. And Jake Vilwalk of TCO and Relentless Fly Fishing, and Dusty Wismith, the manager over at TCO, said, "Hey, we got to talk to you." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." And I looked at them. I'm like, "What's up?" And they're like, "We want you to come work for us." And I was like, "Really?" And I'm like, I really want to be a fishing guide. I want to work in the fly shop." But they're like, "Yeah, we understand that. And yeah, we still want you to come work for us." And I'm like, "Okay, well, I take off in the winters to kind of go coach snowboarding. That's my wintertime gig, is coaching snowboarding over in Europe." And they're like, "Yeah, that's fine. You work when you're home." I'm like, "All right, well, hey, I want to meet Tom for coffee. I don't want to be late. Can I talk to you next week about this?" And as I left the fly shop that day, I realized that I had just walked away from a job offer telling them that I'll be back in a week,
Your dream job too, right?
Yeah, it's so odd. I found myself later, throughout working at TCO and working with Jake at Relentless Fly Fishing, it kind of through methods of discovery over the next few months and years, because I never submitted a resume So it was just a natural fit.
There you go.
It was a natural fit. You know, when it works right, it happens. And, you know, later down the road, I guess they found out what else I did in life. So yeah, it sort of worked.
Hey, you're still there though, right? How long have you been working there?
I've been there since about, I guess this is my 5th season. Yeah, TCO has been there for almost 5 years now, 5.5 years.
Okay.
And I wasn't there for the initial few months, but I think they were open for 4 months when I joined the team there. And it's been super positive ever since, you know.
That's awesome.
I've migrated more into just as the need has risen for guided fly fishing in the Cumberland Valley. I've moved into almost like a full-time head trout guide position with Relentless. But, you know, I still work in the shop. I still keep it real in the shop with my customers and my dedicated, dedicated customers. You know, you got to keep your feet on the ground, and I love it. It's a great thing for fly fishing to be growing.
Yeah.
You know, especially with everything that's going on these days and social distancing. You know, I mean, fly fishermen and fly fisher women, you know, we're masters of social distancing. That's all we've been trying for years. You know what I mean, Steve? I mean,
right. Exactly.
I'd say fly fishing's in a good position.
Yeah, no, that's great. Now, I watched this video that you made. So you said some guys from the snowboard industry came out and cut this video of you. It's a really great video, and we'll post this on our show notes. But talk about your video and what went into that.
Right. Oh man. Let's see here. In a nutshell, friends of mine from Ski Roundtop, you know, a local ski resort, Matt Stamball and Andrew, his buddy that works with him, they wanted to branch out into the outdoors and create some outdoor media. And, you know, I knew those guys from my snowboard contacts, and I said, sure. I said, let's go out and fish, you know, but I said, you know, just because, you know, you want a hard time catching a fish, Steve, the easiest way to do that is put a camera and a microphone on you and fish
exactly.
Stop eating. You know what I mean? I said, you know, we're going to have to go out and really put some time in. And, I wanted that production to be timeless. You know, I don't really mention names other than the Cumberland Valley, the area, which is, you know, that's a intrinsic value. But I didn't want to time date it, you know, with, you know, hi, I'm Neil from blah blah blah. You know, it's just about our area. It's about our area. It's about the sport and the love and the passion of fly fishing.
Yeah, and
of the creeks that we have. So for the better part of, I think, 4 or 5 days, I trudged them around the creeks of the Cumberland Valley with mic'd up, listening to me ramble about anything under the sun.
Oh, that's great.
And that's what came out of it, man. I have a newfound respect for anybody that goes into producing video or an edit or a media piece like that. There is so much behind the scenes work to even get like a 2-minute clip. It's amazing. You know, it's a talent, and it's also interesting, even like doing a podcast like this, it's interesting as to when you explain your passion for something to someone either outside of the industry or outside of the area, what they perceive as the most valuable thing you've said is pretty neat to find out, you know?
Yeah.
So,
right. What ends up in the video.
Yeah. Or, you know, the points that you wanted to talk about. It's always neat and it's interesting to me. And I find it's cool to find out what people migrate to or what they gravitate to, you know, what's important to them. So yeah, good stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's a beautiful video. Like I said, I'll put the link to it out on the show notes, because if you're interested in the Cumberland Valley and the Letort, definitely watch this video. That'll give you a really good taste for not only Neil, but the area. So Neil, tell me, what do you do in the winter when you're not fishing?
Oh man, I'm a coach of snowboarding, and I have a local team here in central Pennsylvania at Ski Roundtop with the Ski Roundtop Race Club.
Oh, cool.
But but as of since for the last 5 years, I've been traveling internationally, and we're based out of Ramsau, Austria. I coach snowboarding for our United States Olympic athlete Aaron AJ Muss.
Really? Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Wow.
Yeah, it's a good balance. It's a good balance to the guide fly fishing season. You know what I mean?
Right.
You fish bum all summer and fall, and a ski bum in the winter time.
Oh my gosh, that's so cool. So where have you been? Yeah, where have you been? You know, as a snowboard coach.
Oh man, traveling with SRC, I've been all over the United States. Ski Roundtop Racing Club. our local group, it's a feeder club into the higher level of snowboarding. So that's taken me all over the United States. And then when you get to, coaching and working with AJ, our Olympic athlete, we do the World Cup. So our season starts usually in Italy, in the Dolomites, and we're at Carretza and Cortina, to Slovenia, to Bagestein, Austria, Bulgaria, Turkey, you name it. It's been an incredible experience that I've gotten to see the world with.
Man, that sounds absolutely amazing. Well, good luck with that. And let me ask you this: were you did you have a snowboarding career as a younger guy?
Yeah, actually, I grew up about 7 miles from a ski resort, which also just happens to be about 3 miles from the Yellow Breeches Creek in Cumberland County. So I grew up, with my father taking me ever since I could walk. I learned how to ski in a cornfield, basically, that had been mowed down in the wintertime.
Well, that sounds like Indiana.
And, yeah. I learned how to ski, and then about 15 years old, I started snowboard racing and competing. Next thing you know, I'm through college and still competing, but starting to get hurt. And my orthopedic surgeon said, "Yo, take up coaching." I'm pretty sure he didn't say "yo," but in so many words, an orthopedic surgeon said, take up coaching.
It's never a good conversation. Snowboarding and orthopedic surgeons.
We keep them afloat, but no, he recommended I take up coaching, and I helped form the Ski Round Top snowboard team, and from there it just exploded. It went on to I got noticed at a national level, and that's when AJ's family reached out to me, and nice. I love working at the upper end of the spectrum, at the Olympic and the World Cup level, but I also like down here in the local grassroots regions, and bringing up our next Olympic athlete. So it's a good balance for me. It keeps me young. So
there you go. There you go. That's awesome. Great. All right. Well, let's jump down into the bits and bytes of tips, techniques, and gear. So, okay, here's my question. So when someone calls you and says, "Hey, I want you to guide me on the Letort," like, what's the conversation? What do you tell them? What do you ask them?
All right. Normally, somebody calls me and wants to go to the Letort. I try to find out some stuff about their expectation, and pretty quickly you can find out whether they've done their homework or not,
Yeah.
Most of the time, folks that come to me, they've done their homework. They've done their research on the Letort. They know it's a tough game. And, I ask them, hey, depending on the season, and we can talk about that later, but, they come completely outfitted. It's not one of those deals where they're, I'm bringing bobbers and indicators and a double nymph rig over for them to drag through there. We talk about leaders, and I can get into specifics with that if you'd like.
Sure. But I'm just a little bit about, like, you were telling me before the show that you really have to map expectations. Like, you really have to talk it through. And I thought maybe some people, do you talk some people out of coming? Like, hey, maybe this isn't for you. Let's just go over to Yellow Breeches instead.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And if that little radar goes off, by something they say or whatnot, I might just suggest that we go over to the Yellow Breeches for an hour or so.
Yeah.
And we go to an upper portion of the Yellow Breeches, which is tighter surroundings,
right?
And more technical dry fly fishing, or dry dropper at best, and we work it out, and then we go over to the Letort, because hunting those fish, and with their genetics, that Loch Levin genetics, that, they're constantly looking out for overhead predation and birds of prey. And they're just so skittish that planning a trip on the Letort requires, when you get out of your car, you have to get in a mind frame. And I've had people that they fish with me on the Yellow Breeches. We have like a hallowed waters tour with our company, with Relentless Fly Fishing. And where you fish the Cumberland Valley streams, you fish the Big Spring, the Yellow Breeches, and the Letort. And we go to the Yellow Breeches, and I might be laughing, and we're kind of, we're not trudging through the water, but we're laughing and joking. And we go to the Big Spring, and, we're still laughing and joking, but we're a little quieter. And then we go to the Letort and it's whispers. Now keep in mind, we're still laughing, but it's whispers. You know what I mean? And they realize, they're like,
why are you whispering though?
Yeah, exactly. We're talking about techniques and approach. Look, I just did it naturally, just started talking to you about it. I think about the Letort and I start changing my voice.
Start whispering.
Yeah, it becomes a tactical approach to fishing the Letort. And the people that I guide, they're like, wow, they're like, it's like when we got out of the car, a light switch flipped and you got into different Neil modes. And they're like, focused. They love it because, yeah, it's a very focused, it's a reverence for the stream. It's not, and it's a confidence,
Sure.
When you've done all your homework, you need to go over there prepared and confident. And after all, a good friend of mine told me to fish for trout anywhere in the world. You fish for them like you do in Pennsylvania. You just go out and fish. And at the bottom line, at the end of the day, no matter how much tactical savvy and preparation you've done, you still have to just make a cast and set a hook with a good drift. You know what I mean? It's still fishing,
Yeah, right, exactly.
One of the highlights of a day on the Letort, like say we'll fish through Otto's Meadow, we'll fish from there up into the creek. When we finally, have called it a session and we're going to move, we usually wind up laughing and almost like the first breaths you talk to somebody else, you speak real loud because you no longer care. And you're just like, wow, that was intense, and you shake hands, you high five, or, it's the hunt is over, you know what I mean? Or when we catch one, it's you finally yell or cheer and laugh. And it's a great feeling, man. It's a great feeling.
That's great.
That you don't get on a lot of other waterways, that I fish in the world. So yeah, man, that's what it's about.
Yeah, you were talking about the fish are kind of always on the lookout for birds of prey and whatnot. What are some of the other challenges that an angler is going to encounter when fishing the Letort?
Yeah, absolutely. The most challenging thing, I think, with the cress grass and the cress beds, the elodea, it creates a series of microcurrents. If you throw a dry fly out if you cast a dry fly on most creeks, you put an upstream mend in your dry fly, and it'll drift straight down the stream. Where the Letort has all these little slow, fast little channels that during a drift, your fly is going to almost just swim around in different directions.
Wow.
And these microcurrents are one of the most unnerving things I see for visiting anglers. They look at it and they're like, that's where the fly landed. Now it's 4 feet away from where it was drifting, in a separate current. So that's a definite challenge to fishing the Letort.
So what do you do about that then? What's the answer? What do you tell your clients?
It's just line control and really dissecting. I look at the Letort in probably sections of about 10 feet in length, and that's pretty short. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
If you look at a creek, maybe you cast a fly out, a dry fly out, and you'll let it drift, 20, 30 feet, 40 feet, maybe, well, probably not 40, but 30 feet. The Letort, I might look at it like, okay, we're going to cast that fly in, and you've got a 5-foot drift, and then we're going to pull the fly out slowly and recast.
Yeah.
Also, when we do start fishing it, you make your first cast your best presentation, because after that, they're usually gone. So it's 1 or 2 shots, and someone
That's it.
I'll politely ask, like when I'm fishing it, I take maybe 3 shots in a run with a presentation and then move on. Because if the fish is going to hit, I'm not going to coerce it up. It's going to attack immediately.
Oh, okay.
Right after your fly hits the water, in the first 2 feet is where I get 90% of my strikes on dry flies. Okay. It's just the nature of the beast. They're so in tune, and when they commit to something, they're going to blast it right away. You're not going to get a long, slow look or a refusal. You might get a lot of refusals, I can guarantee you that. It's just that it happens and then it's gone. Is there a good time or a best time to fish the Letort, or is it always this tough? I can go over the seasons. I love each season on the Letort, and it provides a different experience, for a lot of it. I prefer the little black stoneflies that happen in February and March. Huh. Little black stoneflies on the surface, because it's almost like it's been a long winter, and this is the first insect to have a surface presence that the big fish start looking at, the bigger fish.
Sure.
So you can go out and in March, right before COVID happened, and I had some clients out there, and we were raising 5 fish in a day on the Letort in the month of March, before we got shut down. So it really interesting time to fish. And then, May, you've got your black caddis and your sulfurs, if you're lucky. June is a month of beetles and ants for me.
Yeah.
Just terrestrial fishing. You're in the heart of this, you're getting into it. The grasses are coming up pretty thick by, May and into June. July through September, trichos in the morning, grasshoppers, and we'll fish beetles all the way into the first frost. And then, then when it comes to October, November, and December, we lighten up, because that's when those wild trout can start looking at spawning, and really the spawn in the last many years, I should say, coincides with the first day of rifle season in November in Pennsylvania.
That's big.
So that first day of rifle season, you're going to see fish on reds on the Letort, and we don't fish during that time period. So,
okay.
If you're on the Letort in November, I would maybe take a rain check on that. I don't recommend November or December. I recommend leaving those wild fish. The Letort has enough issues, and these fish are fighting for survival. Let them spawn and let them alone.
Leave them alone.
And then right around the new year, you can start breaking out those sculpins and shanks, minnows and any other streamer pattern, and that's also a fun time. Something about, because you don't get to I really don't fish streamers much on the Letort, just really in the month of January and February.
Okay.
And it's also fun to do because we only do it for a short time, and you can really move some big post spawn fish that are hungry. So,
do you nymph ever? Because don't they eat a lot of cress bugs?
Yeah, you can. You can absolutely tightline nymph or indicator nymph.
Okay.
If you can find some riffly water, and you just have to put in your time and find that riffly water.
Okay.
And I would, it's a great time to nymph cress bugs. You can do that even all the way up in that PhD water I talked about, up in Vince's Meadow and up in the quarry area.
Right.
You can nymph that with cress bugs in February and March. Because it's a spring-fed creek, the temperatures are relatively stable, and the fish still eat, and they definitely eat nymphs year-round. But as the watercress and the invasive species, the reed canary grasses grow into the summertime, I avoid nymphing. Maybe a dry dropper technique, like a grasshopper, the traditional hopper dropper. A big size 8 or a size 10 Letort hopper with a cress bug underneath of it on 6X tippet, and you might get, you might turn a few heads.
Okay, give it a shot. So with all those weeds, all the watercress in the water and other things, how do you, when you get a decent fish on, how the heck do you land it?
Oh man, well, hopefully you went to church that week. No.
Yeah, right, exactly.
The first thing those fish do, it's a balancing act. Part of your cast and your presentation is you have to think, if I do connect, am I going to steer that fish into an open lane? And we all carry long handled nets. Anybody that fishes the Letort has almost like what you would consider maybe in our western streams of the United States, like a boat net, with like a 3 or a 4 foot handle. And that's to lean down, get down under or over the undercut bank and stop that fish from going underneath and snapping you off, or stop it from swimming into a cress grass patch.
Oh, really?
I know, as a matter of fact, Vince Marinero used to talk about that when he would hook a fish on like a sculpin pattern, and it would swim straight into a cress grass. He would actually point the rod tip directly at the fish and keep a tight line, and then walk backwards and pull that fish directly backwards.
Really?
And horse it out.
Oh my gosh.
And and when we're streamer fishing, we're using 10 and 12 pound fluorocarbon tippets, so you can put the pressure on a fish.
Yeah.
But even a grasshopper, I mean, heck, 3 years ago, I had a fish break off 3X tippet like it was nothing on a grasshopper eat. I mean, I put a cast probably, 2 feet off the bank, and it looked like the bank just came out and hiccuped and it ate the fly. the wake from the fish was that big,
man,
and it snapped off. And I hate to snap off fish. I feel that I owe them not having a fly in their mouth. I mean,
he's got a mustache, right?
Yeah, it was a barbless hook, but I hate breaking off fish. But every once in a while you get a surprise. But yeah, that's one of the cress grass is definitely an influence.
How big do the fish get in the Letort? Like, what's your biggest?
Oh man, my personal best on the Letort, just under 20. I'm going to say. I don't measure fish. But
yeah,
and I don't know, and I don't measure any fish, but it wasn't 20, but it was darn close.
A good sized fish, man. That's a good fish anywhere, right?
Yeah, man. Yeah, anything wild like that is a great fish. I've heard of 3 trout on the Letort in the last maybe 5-6 years that went over 22, 23 inches. There's a young guy at the shop, Alex Calivris, will love me for saying his name, but he has caught the nicest brown trout on the Letort that I've seen in the last 5 years. And I have to give credit where credit's due, man. That fish was 23 3/4 inches. And he caught it right at his feet during a high water event. The water was puffed up and it was, he stuck a real nice fish. So
that's cool. So it is possible.
Yeah, man. If you ever go to the fly shop, there's a picture of him with it, and he'll be the first to tell you the story. So
what's his name again? Say it one more time.
His name is Alex Calivris.
There you go, Alex.
Is a good guy.
Huh?
He's a young kid. And he's a young guy, young man, and
there we go.
He deserves all the credit because he stuck a beautiful fish.
Man, so speaking of measuring, so with all the challenges on the Letort, how do you measure success fishing the Letort?
Oh man, measure of success for me?
Yeah.
I talk with a couple friends of mine, and we never come out and say numbers, but what we will do is we'll say it's a good day. For me, a successful day is if I fish at the pace of nature.
Yeah.
Honestly. And I'll explain that a little bit. If I can keep my feet from walking anxiously and hunting all day and making tactical casts, for me, that's a good day. If I didn't spook many fish, if I got a shot at a fish, or if I positioned myself where a fish rose a couple times and I made a good cast to it, that's a good day for me. And then of course, it's not like winning the lottery. I mean, you can catch fish there, and we do. We do. A good outing is a fish. I'll tell you. When I go there with myself, when I go to the Letort, I do plan on catching a fish that day. So, but the measure of success, I mean, we all know as anglers, if you've been in the angling community, if you measure success on numbers of fish, you're going to be disappointed a lot of your time when you go, in life. That's
a great point.
I've traveled all over the U.S. and the world, arguably, and come up with a bullet, with a donut or a skunk day. But there's so much more to it. To me, it's if you've properly prepared yourself and fished. Some days it's going to happen, some days it's not. So that's how I prepare for a good day.
That's a really good answer. I love that. So true.
Cool, man.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question. You had mentioned to me a couple of weeks back when we first talked that you've got a mentor, right? And I think his name is Jerry. Is that right?
I do.
So tell me, what was the biggest lesson he taught you?
Oh, man. Jerry Kerstetter has shown me so much about the Letort. I would say understanding the flow of the water and what it does. And that's in relation to not only fishing, but to conservation and the effect of moving water on the creek and where fish are going to be located and habitat. Jerry's was a good friend of Vince's, of Vince Marinero's, and Vince taught Jerry a lot of things. And he has taught me that deviled microcurrent that we talk about. He's taught me how to understand that and how when you see one current flowing and then changing, what it does to not only the bank or the flow, but also where the bugs are going to be traveling, because the bugs travel in that current.
Sure.
And where to pick up fish. And Jerry has also taught me the approach. You want to talk about fishing and getting in the zone, everything slows down. And Jerry has taught me that, stop moving my feet and fish and really get into their psyche and match up with that fish,
Yeah.
And probably the most important thing is just respect for the waterway. If we don't take care of it, and if we aren't diligent, I have my own little saying, if we don't do it, who will?
Yeah.
And that's kind of Jerry's off, who is going to take care of the fishery and the habitat? When a bank is collapsing for one reason or another, or there's grasses grown up in a certain area, who is going to take care of it? And you have to look in the mirror and say, I am. And that's the most important thing.
It's great.
In the end, I want to think of my mentor, I want to think of my mentor as someone who tirelessly worked on the Letort and enjoyed every moment of it.
Yeah.
We start up in Bonnybrook and we work 500 yards down in a season, and we always laugh and we say, well, just as the season's ending for the work season, before the spawn, we have to be out of the creeks. The Fish and Boat Commission wants us out because we can't disrupt the spawning. Just as we finish one area, well, it's time to walk back up and start over again next year. You know what I mean? The work's always going to be there.
Yeah. Fixing the roads in Chicago, it seems like they're always working on them.
Exactly. It's that undying love of the stream, and far more than just being an angler, but being a steward of the stream and making it a better place and a better habitat. That's what I've learned.
I love that. Well, tell me, how is the stream doing? Because there's a lot of conservation work that goes into keeping this stream in good shape. How's it doing?
That's a matter of opinion. I think the creek, I'm going to say this, it has unlimited potential, but we need to take action to remove the silt that has built up. Mm-hmm. And, decades and decades of, I don't want to say inaction, but limited action has caught up. And there's sections of the Letort that have a tremendous amount of siltation that has just built up. There are areas where the banks need reinforced because of trees that have fallen in and eroded the banks. We need action now, and that's what Cumberland Valley Trout Unlimited is doing.
Oh, that's great.
There's a part of a group that I'm involved in called the Letort Long Range Planning Committee, and we are currently applying. We're in the cold water plan, developing a cold water plan to move forward, and we're going to be in the near future. We're going to be rolling this out to the public. A plan for the Letort to get it sediment free, to get the mayflies back, to get the banks stabilized. Where we're going to be working with environmental consultants, hopefully, and getting some monies that we've raised and through grant monies and applying for grants and Coldwater Heritage grants and Chesapeake Bay Foundation grants. And I'm not an expert in these fundings, but we're going to be applying for. There are people that are in our organization, and we're applying for that. And we're going to make a step to really do an overhaul on the Letort, starting up in that Bonnybrook and Tragos Meadow area that I talked about, and really make an impact from the headwaters down.
Good for you.
The saying, it all runs downhill, or it all flows downstream.
Sure.
It really rings true in this event. Our actions and the actions of our neighbors upstream affect us in every way.
So what can a local angler do? Should they join TU? What can we do?
Trout Unlimited is the common thread of all passionate anglers that are serious about conservation. I've talked about as an angler matures or whatnot. I think once an angler matures and realizes that without conservation of our natural resources and our water quality, we're not going to have anything. And that's what lies at the core of Trout Unlimited. And I mean, get involved in your local Trout Unlimited group. I'm so proud to be a part of Cumberland Valley Trout Unlimited and to work within a community of dedicated and passionate people that are willing to give up their free time and go out and volunteer and put hard-earned sweat into these creeks.
Sure.
Find an organization. There's a Trout Unlimited probably. If you live near water or you fish in water, there's a Trout Unlimited group near you that you could support. And it's more than a financial support. It's getting out there and being an advocate for the creeks you love. Because if you don't do it, who will? I say it again.
Heck yeah. That's a great point. TU is seems like every podcast I do, the guide's talking about TU and the work that they're doing. And I just got something in the mail this week from them. They're promoting lifetime membership, and they're giving away a free Orvis Helios rod kit with a lifetime membership. So yeah, right. I mean, that's, at least they sent one to me anyway. So I thought that was pretty cool. Well, that's really good to hear. Let's backtrack just for a minute. I meant to ask you about top fly patterns. Like, if you were just to tick off, like, what are the top fly patterns, sizes, colors, that kind of thing? Could you just give us a list of, maybe your top 10 or so?
Yeah, I can look into my fly box. If I'm fishing the Letort, I'm definitely having I'll just run down them if you want.
Sure, yeah.
A 16 and an 18 black stonefly for the early season.
Yep.
I would never leave home without a box of midges, gray, tan, olive, or probably and cream midges in 18 to 22, and then the black caddis in a 16 and an 18. The sulfurs are great for May, and that's a size 14, 16, and 18. And then just load up a box of terrestrials. I mean, parachute ant, dusty wismus devi ant, Ed Shank's Letort hopper, the Letort cricket, jacids. Make sure you have a box of terrestrials, and then it's used from July to September.
Yeah. As
far as cress bugs go, our most successful cress bug, and I'll let the cat out of the bag, and I hope a couple guys don't get on me about this, but if I was fishing the Letort, I would fish a size 14 sow bug colored, cress bug or a sow bug, size 14.
Okay.
That covers 99% of the game as a dropper flyer or as a nymph,
Okay. Would you mind if we put some pictures of these flies out on the Destination Angler Facebook page?
No, I'd be happy to send you some pictures, man.
Okay.
I'd definitely do that for you.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay.
Yeah. It's enough of a challenge. So anything we can do to put the odds in the anglers,
there we go.
Chance of success, I'm willing to do it, man.
That's awesome.
We want you to have a good time on our creeks.
Yeah, man.
So it gets lonely out there.
You're right. In between thousands of casts, it sounds like.
Right.
So what about some local watering holes in the area? What would you recommend there?
Oh, man. If you're in Boiling Springs or in the Cumberland Valley, local watering holes, the iconic Boiling Springs Tavern, right across from the fly shop. It's been there forever. It's where I took my dad for his retirement dinner. It's what makes the experience. The Allenbury Resort has just undergone an amazing renovation since 2016.
Oh, good.
They've left a lot. Yeah, they've left a lot of the old, from the old Allenbury, but they've put a little bit of touch of new in to bring it up to, what we would consider, a luxury resort. There's a couple places in Carlisle. Molly Pitcher Brewing Company is a classic. Well, not a classic, but it's a great little microbrew. It makes a trip to the area complete, man.
Yeah,
that's what I would recommend.
So, is fly fishing gear okay in these places?
Oh man, at the Boiling Springs Tavern, if you go in and you have on a fly fishing hat or something with flies in it, you're considered a local celebrity, man. if you
want to know
up to the bar, yeah, you could, they are fly fishing friendly, and the same with Allenbury. These places, that's what's spoken here.
Okay.
The Appalachian Trail and fly fishing. You can go in there as you are. From stream to tavern, no problem.
That sounds great. Well, good. Well, listen, how can our listeners get in touch with you, Neil?
Easiest thing to do, you can always follow Instagram, just at Neil Sunday, NeilSunday. You can get in touch with me at neil@TCOFlyFishing.com. That's probably the easiest way to do it. TCO Fly Shops, if you're in the state of Pennsylvania, there's one kind of close to you. We've got 4 locations. One in Haverford, Pennsylvania, down towards the Philadelphia area. Our original store that Tony Gaiman, the owner, opened up 30 years ago in Reading, Pennsylvania. Our State College location up near Penns Creek and Spring Creek. And finally, the Boiling Springs TCO, which was formerly the Yellow Breeches Outfitters. So we've been there now for 5 years, and you can always check us out at TCOFlyFishing.com. Yeah, I any questions or inquiries or anything you might have about the Cumberland Valley, I encourage you to check us out. You can always stop by the fly shop right in Boiling Springs at TCO Outfitters. TCO Fly Shops is a great resource. And
great.
Hey, if you go out there to the Letort and you're having problems, check us out. There's myself and 5 other guides at Relentless Fly Fishing in the Cumberland Valley that are passionate and live, eat, and breathe these streams like I do.
That's great.
And we cut the learning curve off. That's what we aim to do. At Relentless Fly Fishing as guides, as being the premier guide service for the fly shop, TCO Fly Shop. If you have 3 days, spend it, cut the learning curve and come out with us, and we'll show you a good 3 days or even, 4 hours of a half day.
Yeah.
We can make it the most productive 4 hours that you can have.
Yeah, absolutely. It sounds hard enough as it is. I mean, it feels like the first time you get out there, put the odds in your favor, right? And get somebody like Neil to teach you how to make those 2-foot drifts perfectly. So listen, we'll put all this out on our show notes on our website, and we'll put some pictures of Neil's top fly picks on our Facebook page. As always, you can email me with comments and suggestions at shaig50@gmail.com. That's shaigh50@gmail.com. If you're a guide and want to be on the show, please give me a shout. And if you found it in your heart to give us a 5-star review wherever you get your podcast, we'd sure appreciate that. As always, our music is by our Brothers Fountain. Hope you enjoyed the show, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.
Well, I'll go from the land to the shining sea. But I know there's more to life than what the eye can see. Yeah.